Project for today is going to be this 2018 Polaris Ranger 500. It needs a full service. We're going to change the engine oil and filter, change front differential oil, change the transmission oil, and then grease it and just give it a good once over. Also, we'll do the air filter, probably just clean that for now. But I'll get you set up and we'll get started. So the engine oil drain plug is right here. It's a 6mm Allen bolt. There is a washer, a sealing washer on it that you want to make sure you don't drop in the pan. Here you can see the sealing washer. If that's crushed too much, you do want to replace that. But this one actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. But after a few oil changes, they start to kind of squish out and they'll end up either getting stuck on the plug and not seal very good, or they'll just end up leaking. So it's a good thing to check that when you're doing this. And then you also want to make sure that you're on the 6mm one, because the next one towards the back is an 8mm, and that's for draining the transmission, so you don't want to pull the wrong plug when you're doing this. While the oil's draining, we'll check this air filter. Not the easiest to get in here under this box. It doesn't look too terrible, but we'll blow that out. So I got the air filter blowing out, and I'll put the drain plug back in. Still dripping just a little bit. Slide that back, that's how I'm going to drain the transmission oil too. No oil filter's over here on the passenger side. And I just put a little, it's actually one of them little plastic cereal bowls I put underneath there. Now the filter we're replacing it with is a high flow HF 198. I've had good luck with these high flow filters, and if they do get too tight, they have a little hex head on there on a lot of them, which I like. Makes it easier for getting them back off later. Also, you want to make sure that you get a good film of oil on the O-ring. That also helps with getting them off later. Now we can fill it up with oil. You can fill it through that top hole, otherwise down here where the dipstick is, you can fill it. So I'm going to fill it down here. I'm going to be using a 10W40 full synthetic. It's oil by Mystic. I'm not really stuck on one brand for a lot of this stuff. You just need to make sure that you use actual ATV oil in all these applications. You don't want to just run an automotive 10W40 oil in them. I'll get it filled up with oil, and then we'll start draining the transmission. So I put 2 quarts of oil in it, and then I ran it just so it fills the oil filter and everything, and then you let it sit for a couple minutes, and then pull the dipstick out, wipe it off, and then you actually do want to screw this one in all the way and then unscrew it back and then check it. Some of them you don't screw in, some of them you do, so this is one that you do thread in all the way to check the oil. So now we'll drain the transmission oil. Underneath here, this is your check plug, so when we go to refill it, we'll fill through here until oil gets to the bottom of the threads in this, and then that's when it's full. So the drain plug is towards the back of the machine here. It's an 8mm Allen socket. This one should also have a sealing washer on it that you got to make sure comes off with the plug. This one feels like it might be stuck to the transmission. That didn't have very much oil in it. I'm thinking we were pretty low. So another thing you want to look at when you pull this plug out, this one does have an O-ring on it. Let's check the condition of that, see if it's cracked or all squished or anything. But this is a magnetic plug, so you don't want it to be like that tall with shavings and stuff. This one has some shavings on it, which is normal. They're always going to have some shavings. It's doing its job collecting that stuff then. But we'll get this cleaned off and then put that back in, and then we'll start refilling it. So got the plug cleaned off. That's what it should look like when it's clean. So now that we've got the oil drained out of the transmission, this is the fill plug. It's also an 8mm Allen. We'll take that out. And this also has an O-ring on it. You want to inspect to make sure it's clean and doesn't have cracks or anything in it. If it's suspect at all, I just replace them usually. So these can be a little bit tricky to put oil in. I've got a bucket pump to pump the oil in with. I've got this here set up, but if you don't want to use the Polaris oil, AMSOIL does sell equivalent oils. It's basically like a 75-90 full synthetic gear oil is what they run. And then the front differential, they want you to run the Polaris demand drive oil, which they do make. AMSOIL makes a demand drive oil that is equivalent to the Polaris oil also. It holds about 1 1/4 quarts on the transmission side. And the front diff only holds like 1/4 quart, so. So it's kind of hard to get on camera, but you can see there's oil right at the bottom of the threads of that plug. And that's where the full mark is. You don't want to do it till it's just running out of there, which sometimes that does happen, just if you can't tell how full it's getting. But we'll put this plug back in, and then we'll move on to the front differential. So the oil drain for the front differential is right in between those two bolts underneath the front of the machine here. I started to take the check plug out, which is buried back in there. You can see that plug down there. But a lot of times what happens is these get ridden in water that's going up over the top. And if your vent hose or anything has a crack in it, it ends up getting water in it, so it's overfilled actually. So I pulled that check plug out. It ended up draining some oil out of there, so we're going to drain it before we pull that plug out. This one's also a 8mm Allen. That fill plug can be pretty difficult to get out of there. You have to use a Allen wrench like this to get in there. You can't use the socket style like this, or at least mine doesn't fit in there. I could see there was a little bit of water in with that. This plug also has a magnet on it. This one you don't want to see a heck of a lot of shavings on. This one's got a little bit on there, but it's nothing to worry about. But the transmission, you have a lot more gears running around in there that's going to cause shavings. With the front, you don't want to see much. This is pretty much normal. This has been a long time since he changed it. You really should change it every 500 miles or so. It only holds like 1/4 quart of oil. So, but we'll clean this off, put this back in, and then we'll get to fill in the front. So I just got a bottle set up here. This is that AMSOIL front demand drive oil. So then I'll just tip that down into that fill hole. You can kind of see it back there. And then I'll fill it till it comes up to the bottom of the threads of that hole also. So then one of the last things we want to do is grease the machine. It has grease points on the ends of the front A-arms on both sides. Will be 4 total. And then back here, you've got one here, and then on the top and bottom, same to the rear of the A-arm. So there's 8 total side to side on the back here. And then underneath, sometimes on that slip yoke under there, there'll be a grease zerk on there. Then we'll check the antifreeze or coolant real quick on it. You just gotta pop the hood here open. This one comes open a long ways. So you don't want to open this when it's hot, but this one's been cooled off now for a while. You can see the antifreeze down there. It's just a little below the neck, so that'll be fine. And then there's an overflow tank here that you want to have some in it. Which that I can see down in there. There's a full line about right here that you want it to be, which we're about up to that, so we'll call that good. And we'll get to greasing it up, and this one will be pretty well done. So another thing you can check when you're doing a service is the spark plug is right back here. You can pop that wire off, take the plug out, but this one got a new plug not that long ago, so I'm not going to check this one. And then also take a look at the boots on the CV axles and make sure those don't have cracks or grease coming out of them or anything is another thing. You can check the belt, but usually I don't check the belt unless the customer asks me to. That's a little bit more work pulling that cover off and stuff. So I think this one's going to be pretty well finished up now. I've got it all greased up. All those grease points are greased. So we'll go out and take it for a test drive and probably call this one good. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Everything seems to work fine on it. It does have a little bit of an exhaust leak. I can hear the little sputtering out the exhaust, but it's nothing to worry too much about. But if you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.